Routine. Who hasn't faced this tedious period in their adult life? Work home, home work. There, problems. Here even worse. Wife, kids. When am I going to sleep? Isn't retirement the only way? But, fortunately, in recent months, I have built myself a convenient schedule called work at night. It's great. You work when everyone is at home, and when you come back from a shift, everyone has already left. The wife to work, children in kindergarten, in school. And so on in a circle. What could be better? At first I thought I was in paradise. You sleep after work, no one interferes. But in the last 10 days, things started to go wrong. As soon as I close my eyes, someone's old grumbling, muttering, sometimes coughing and wheezing starts coming from behind the wall. And it feels as if the source of the sounds lives not in the neighboring apartment, but right here in the other room. I've tried everything. Sleep kits, headphones, sleeping pills, alcohol. Nothing helps. The disgusting old man seems to be in my head and follows me everywhere. I complained to my shift manager at work. He asked me, "What's the matter? Why do I come to work like a wreck?" He mocked me at first, but then he gave me a solution. He said he knew a woman who removes spoil and evil eye. She says you have a bad aura in your apartment. And I think, what if it's really from the old owners? I don't know if someone died in their apartment. Or, what's the worst, someone was murdered. Anyway, I take the phone number of this whispering grandmother. I invite, while there is no one at home. I do not want my wife to think that I have gone cuckoo. So the grandmother arrives. Walked around the house, and then her eyes as goggle. She looks somewhere in the void, as if she sees something. At first she is silent, and then she starts swearing in a language that is not ours. I said, "What's wrong?" She's swearing at me. She put on her boots and walked out the door without even taking any money. Well, I think, and I live here. In time I even got used to the strange sounds in my apartment. I never slept, a restless slumber, nothing more. My body had worn down to the point where I began to hallucinate. I've seen the person who keeps me awake several times. It's a nasty old grandfather. His skin is wrinkled, there's a nasty hump on his back. His face is twisted, always disgruntled, his eyes are empty, his teeth are gone, just rotten debris sticking out of his mouth. I've never seen a more unpleasant creature in my life. The first meeting was painless. I opened my eyes and saw the old troll strolling into the kitchen. I could see him clearly. He didn't seem to care about me. He was slowly dragging a fixed leg behind him. It was perpetually straight and clearly shorter than the other. The other leg, however, he managed quite briskly. The old man went into the kitchen, gulped down a glass of water, and returned to the living room. He grumbled some more, then snored. I thought about finding something heavy to knock the troll out, but I couldn't get out of bed. It was like I was paralyzed. Have you ever felt like that? My back felt like it was stuck to the mattress. I fell asleep before I knew it. I only woke up when my wife and children came home. The troll had traditionally disappeared. I didn't tell my family. They wouldn't believe me and they'd put me in the nut house. The next encounter was no less creepy. I woke up to someone sniffing me. I gingerly opened my eyes. It was him, the creepy old man. He touched my face with his rotten nostrils. I jerked, but felt a sharp pain in my back and paralysis throughout my body. I couldn't even scream. Everything was cramped. The old man looked at me, drooled, cursed under his breath, and waddled away from my room. I had time to study his outfit. I recognized the old mont's clothes as my own, only tattered, yellowed, and in some places ragged. The bastard got into my closet. I thought at the time. Turns out, it was completely different. I got the clue again at work. This time it was a conversation with the in-house psychologist. I admit, I used to laugh at him, saying, "Why do men need a psychologist in the shop?" He came to me himself. A young guy, thin, always in a white shirt and tie. "Andrich," he said, "you're not yourself. I've been watching you for weeks.
What's the matter? Do you drink a lot? And then I told him everything. Where can I go?
If he makes a bad recommendation, I'll get pissed on. Anyway, he listened to me. I thought he'd laugh. He didn't.
Your old troll is nothing more than a figment of your imagination, said the psychologist.
You created him in your head.
What about in my head? He's quite real, I can see him, I can hear the noise he makes.
And you, says the psychologist, try to talk to him. To your heart's content. I wake up again in a cold sweat.
There's this monster sitting next to me, on the bed, rocking back and forth. That's how schizos calm down, I've heard.
Who are you?
I said to him without moving. And then he looked at me, and I finally saw his eyes.
And in them I saw his story, and strangely enough, it resembled mine.
But it had a fictional ending.
The old man is abandoned, left all alone.
He doesn't go anywhere, he's alone.
Slowly going mad.
A sad story with no happy ending.
I felt sorry for the old man. I am crying. Stop. I look at his face again.
Is it me?
The old man sitting on the edge of the bed is my image in the future.
Apparently, I am destined to spend my old age alone.
They love you. I shouted to my grandfather. He looked up. Lights of hope sparkled in them.
You yourself rejected them.
I continued. Why?
A tear ran down the old man's cheek.
He waddled slowly away from the room. Hey! I called out to him. Grandfather stopped.
I'll make it up to you.
Grandpa didn't even turn around. He nodded silently and walked on, slowly disappearing behind the wall.
I fell asleep.
The old man never came back. I wasn't home alone anymore, though. I changed jobs, changed schedules. I bought flowers for my wife and cake for my children.
Now I see my family every day, I spend a lot of time with them, and on weekends we go out of town together.
I never saw my grandfather again.
But if he came back, I would shake his hand heartily. After all, it was he who helped me to rethink my life, to realize what really has value in it.
Hey, thanks, old troll.
Today, Mom and Dad have to go to the movies and leave me alone.
In all my 10 years, this will be the first time.
Usually, if my parents were going somewhere without me, I was taken to my grandmother's house or my mom's friends.
But now I am an adult. I have long dreamed of being home alone, to have a party like in the movies or just turn up the music at full volume. Yes, so that the neighbors on the heads knocked. I am a quiet girl, but when parents are not around I can easily become a rebel. My classmates at school were convinced of that.
Evening came. My mom instructed me for the 1000th time that knives cannot touch, turn on the water and leave the room, cannot, dabble with the light, and various techniques too cannot.
I understood that, because I didn't want to burn down the house on such a beautiful evening. My dad told me to listen to my mom. My parents kissed me on the top of my head and gave me a big hug.
And remember, don't open the door for anyone. Those were their last words, after which they left the apartment, closing the door from the outside behind them.
Finally, my hour has come. I am all alone in these walls of the house.
As soon as my parents left, the first thing I did was turn on the music and started jumping on the couch, throwing pillows in different directions.
Not even a minute later there was a knock on the front door. I thought it was my parents forgetting something at home, so I hurriedly turned off the music and ran to the door. When I got to the wooden structure, I remembered my mom's words, so I looked through the peephole before I turned the key. When I looked through the peephole, I didn't see anyone. I must have heard it, I thought.
It was the first time it ever stayed at home, and anything could be heard.
I didn't turn on the music again. Instead, I decided to turn on my favorite cartoon on the TV. While I was looking for my favorite cartoon, I heard something fall in the bathroom. From surprise, I turned my head sharply and grabbed at the plaid that was lying to my left. You could read the fear in my eyes. I made up my mind and tiptoed into the bathroom. There was a cup of toothbrushes scattered on the floor. I looked around and saw no one and started picking the brushes off the floor.
As I bent down to put everything back in its place, shampoo started falling from the shelves into the bathtub in the same room.
I was scared out of my mind. "Mommy!" I screamed in fright. Hurriedly, I ran out of the bathroom and found myself back in the living room. All that evening I avoided that room, and to calm myself I went to the kitchen and decided to make myself some tea. As I took out a teapot bag from the kitchen range, I jerked violently and carelessly knocked the entire box of tea over on top of me. This happened because I heard the clear, angry barking of a dog accompanied by a ferocious growl. This caused me to press myself to the floor, covering my ears with my hands. When the sound subsided, I continued to be in the kitchen. Suddenly, the TV turned on abruptly to an evil, satisfying laugh. "Ah!" I screamed as loud as I could. My whole head was filled with thoughts of why me. Why this particular night when I was alone? For a couple more minutes there was interference from the iron behind the wall, as if someone was playing with the antenna on the roof. Later there was silence. My eyes were wet, and I began to remember the days when I stayed with my grandmother, with whom we played warmly, watched cartoons, and ate her pies. Rubbing my eyes with my hands, I timidly stepped outside the threshold of the kitchen. It seemed as if it was all over and had never begun. I went to the TV as soon as possible, pulled the plug from the socket, adjusted the cushions on the couch, put the toys in their places and sat on the chair. Looking around, I looked for my favorite toy, a plush bunny with a green bow around his neck. Looking around, I couldn't find him anywhere. Forgetting about the whole situation earlier, I wanted to go to my room, as suddenly behind my back there was a fierce screech of a cat, as if its tail was run over by a car. I didn't turn around this time, but a couple seconds later I felt a sharp intake of breath on my neck. Without looking back, I flew to my bed, and it happened so fast that I forgot to turn on the light. I always had a nightlight by my bed, and with trembling hands I tried to find the light switch, but it wasn't there. "Mommy, Daddy." I said it almost hysterically, but I couldn't cry loud enough to hear all the sounds. "Please, come back," was my most important wish, which was almost literally ready to save my life. Under the bed, I heard a dog whimpering. My body was showered with goosebumps from fear, and I clutched at the blanket as if it was my only salvation at that moment. I slowly covered myself, tucking the blanket under my limbs so that no one and nothing could get under my fortress. Covering myself with the blanket, I squeezed my eyes shut. The dog stopped whimpering instead. It crawled out from under the bed, claws clattering on the parquet floor, and ran toward the kitchen as if it were about to be fed a fresh piece of meat. And indeed, at that moment a wonderful aroma began to smell from the kitchen, the aroma of food. It was as if Mom was standing at the stove now, cooking her signature chicken in the oven. Pulling the blanket down to eye level, I looked out into the hallway, hoping to see nothing. The light bulb that illuminated the eye-catching area began to flicker. The atmosphere was heating up, as was the bulb itself. After a few flickers, it burst right before my eyes. I reflexively covered myself with a blanket, as if the shards of glass wouldn't reach me through the cloth. The whole thing looked like a balloon burst before my eyes. As I lay under the blanket, I could hear the pounding of my racing heartbeat. I felt out of breath like I had run a world track and field championship. As my physiological rhythms returned to normal, my ears began to ring from the silence. At that very second, that nasty squeak was interrupted by light strokes on my body. A hand approached my head, and a woman's voice filled the silence. "Hi." My first thought was, "Mom?" The sounds of static on the radio spread through the room. The woman began to choke me. With fear, I woke up.